Welcome to the East Bay's best podcast, The Capstone Conversation. This is a show that interviews political, government, and community leaders. We look at what is going on in your city, how are we developing things economically, and where are we going from here? Now I'm your host, Jared Ash. Welcome to today's episode of The Capstone Conversation. Today, I am joined by the Contra Costa County Clerk-Recorder and Registrar of Voters, Kristin Connelly.
Yeah.
Ooh, and I got that all out in one breath.
Hi, Jared. Thanks.
This episode should air February 21st, 2 weeks before primary election day, the first time California is holding a March primary election. And so we're going to talk about updates of what is happening in voting for not just Contra Costa, but in general in California, what you need to know. We're also going to talk a little bit about the clerk recorder's office and all of the other things in addition to the election that they do. So first, Kristin, come on and introduce yourself. Tell the voters a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Jared. I'm happy to be here. So just a little bit about me. I'm in my second year in office. I was first elected to this position in November of 2022. So very honored to be a countywide elected. I grew up in Martinez, born and raised in Martinez, went to Mount Diablo Unified Schools. I'm a really proud local person. Have a background in political science, public policy, and I also practiced employment law in New York. I'm not admitted to practice in California. Some people get sensitive about that. So I'm retired from the practice of law, but have had a long-standing interest in effective election administration. So I'm very excited that my work here is very focused on maintaining just the top quality. Our office has a really strong reputation statewide and nationally for being innovative, being effective, and I'm just honored to be at the helm of this department.
Great. Okay, so let's start there. What is that reputation of innovation? How are you guys innovating in your office?
Yeah, well, in this election cycle, right, it might seem like a very small thing, but one thing that we did to get ahead of the curve a little bit is to improve and increase opportunities for transparency so that our observers, right, when people come to our office, right, we have to do everything for the election in a way that's open for people to come and see. We also, predating me, we installed cameras so that we have cameras on ballots at all times, even if they're just sitting in a warehouse, whatever they're, right? Because we design all of our ballots in-house. But through some innovative thinking among our elections team, we wanted to, we have an observer room, like a media room that allows you to look into where we do adjudication and also some other things related to ballot testing and other things. And so we decided to install some cameras because the single biggest line item in our elections budget are the resources we spend to do signature verification, right? So we have a little more than 700,000 registered voters. Between 90 and 95% of those will participate in the March 5th primary using a vote by mail ballot. So about half of those come back to us through the mail, about half of them come back through our secure drop boxes, but all of those need to have their signatures verified. So they start their journey through the whole path by going through our fancy sorter. We've seen probably a lot of that on the news. And so what happens is that images are scanned of those signatures. And so the most expensive piece of this is the time and energy we spend having humans, because we only have humans do it. We don't rely on any kind of machine algorithm to do it. So we do signature verification. So someone can be both, if they were to come to our office during the canvass, when we're actually sort of counting and tallying and doing all of the things that people like to come and observe, people will be able to simultaneously look up at some computer screens and watch. I'm not going to lie, it's not exciting to watch people compare signatures, but what those monitors will be doing is mirroring the computers of my staff on the first floor. And so the experience for the observer will be enhanced because they can observe multiple things at once And also it's better for my employees who don't have to have someone standing over their shoulder while they're doing their work. So that's just one small thing that we figured out for this year that I think, is just another improvement, because there is a demand to be very open and transparent, and we take that seriously.
It makes sense, especially in an age where there's a lot of criticism of voting officials and the counting process and different things like that. All right, I got to ask, how do you verify signatures? If I sign my name 10 times on a piece of paper right now, 1 in 7 will look nothing alike. And I don't remember whenever I registered to vote decades
Right.
ago what my signature looked like then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so California election code is written so that we have what we try to do is, we don't assume going in that every single person is committing fraud, right? I mean, the vast majority of voters are, right, they are signing. We take into account when we look at signatures, and again, Jessica DeTangel, who's our election services manager for voter services and candidate services, she is our guru on all things signature, both petitions and signature verification. And we know that that their signatures evolve over time, right? As people age, their signature change. And also sometimes signatures are just hard to read a little bit, right? But I mean, for example, I had to write probably 50 signatures before I was happy with one for this job, because my signature is in lots of places. But to get to your question, what we do is we compare the image from the envelope with the images that are in our system, right? So our voter registration system has spots for multiple examples of signatures over time. So it'll have, so let's say, right, it'll have that DMV signature from when I turned 16 and I first got my driver's license, right? So that first image, right? And I left, I went to New York, I did some other things, I came back, I got a new driver's license. When I sat down actually at the DMV, they showed me like, is this you? I forgot I went through like a bad perm, bad glasses phase. At first I was like, no, that's not me. But anyway, I digress. So bottom line, we're allowed to have, we have multiple images. And the vast majority of signatures are accepted. And what we're looking for is some commonality, right? And we also do know that occasionally multiple voters in the same household may inadvertently swap envelopes. So for example, like if I signed Terrence Connelly, my husband, and he signed mine, we would, in our system, we have the ability to actually check that envelope to see, in fact, if that has happened. And then we're able to cross-reference and check. That's like one of the common things why if a signature just is dead wrong, that's why. And so, but what we're, again, I'm probably using too many words. It's a little bit of an art, not a science. But what we're trying to do is see that, yes, in fact, this is this person signed their signature. So, and what happens is when we reject, we go through 3 different levels of people reviewing it before we reject it. And if if their signature is rejected, if there's time, right? If we're doing this, let's say today, or or later this week, right at the very beginning of voting, we'll send them a certified mail, like through certified mail, we'll send an envelope that's a letter that says, hey, your signature didn't match. Please update your signature with us. And actually it's another innovative thing. We're getting close to hopefully being able to pilot some new technology based on a law that was passed last year that would allow us to use new technology. So this would be like a text to cure opportunity for a voter to update their signature with us. And then we could compare those and then they could count. So, but you basically get 2 letters from us to cure your signature if it somehow gets rejected. And then in fact, if you don't update it with us, then we'll send you a 3rd letter that says, your vote unfortunately did not count. Please update your signature with us.
Okay. And Terrence, if you're listening, pay attention to the envelope, brother. Like, come on. Your
Exactly.
wife is the head of the
Exactly.
elections. You got to get it right, man.
Exactly.
And we'll be linking in the show notes to that 16th birthday driver's license for any of the viewers who want to see Kristin at 16 with that perm and big glasses. All right, so let's continue on this path towards elections. March 5th is the primary election. California has, at least in my memory, always had June elections.
Yeah, back in so this predates
Yeah.
me, but back in the 2008 cycle, there was a March presidential primary and then a June primary. So, and for elections officials, we like there to be one primary. So, right, so this is a consolidated primary. We just have March, we don't have June, but it's the first time in the history of California where we are mailing a ballot to every registered voter in a partisan primary. So that really makes this election unique.
And why was that done? What was the intent of the legislature who did that? Why was that done? And what does that mean for your office and for voters?
Sure. So I'm not actually aware of any specific legislative language or intent around this primary, for example, but the law was temporarily enacted during COVID, right, in 2020, that all elections officials had to mail a ballot to every single registered voter. It was something that was very well received by voters, and the legislature made that permanent. And so what that has meant for us actually is we were about 75%, depending on the election, between 2/3 and 75% of voters, pre-2020 in our office were considered permanent vote by mail voters. And we would get those ballots back and process them the same way that we do it now. The leap, it takes more space to do this because there are certain steps we have to do with extraction of those ballots, right? So in addition, so once it's confirmed that your signature is valid, then the ballots get extracted by humans out of the envelopes. They need to be flattened before they then get put in the tally machine. So we've had a little bit of a space crunch in our office. And I think I raised that because I think that's probably been the experience of other elections officials in other counties across California, is that the significant increase in the number of voters who are voting by mail rather than on election day or early voting in person, just it requires more space, and we just have to, we just go through those processes. But that's certainly something that seems to, that's not going away anytime soon. I think that Californians like getting our voter information guide. They like being able to vote by mail, and that's here to stay.
I have both just slightly out of my arm's reach to my voter guide and information. And I just got my ring alert that the mailman was here. And I think
Oh yeah,
uh,
you should have your ballot.
I should have my ballot
Yeah,
there. So I'll go check by the end. I did get the text yesterday from the Secretary of
cool.
State's office telling me it was mailed and I
So
should get it
you are
today.
signed up for ballot tracks, and something I encourage everyone to do on the Secretary of State's website.
How do you do that?
So you go to sos.ca.gov and you check their elections tab, and they'll have information about how to track your ballot. The software is called Ballot Tracks, and it's very, very popular. It's like one of the most popular things that government has done is now allow California voters to track their ballot. And so we encourage everybody to take part. We don't have anything to do with that really in our office. That's something that is run out of the Secretary of State's office. I mean, we obviously coordinate with them, and we have to follow California election code, but that's something that they stood up a few years ago.
Yeah, I like it. It just goes back to knowing, that it's not lost in the post office or
Mhm.
something else, that they
Mhm.
got it and they received it
Mhm.
and it will get counted.
Yeah.
I find it interesting the vote by mail numbers and how that has shifted. I have actually uh, never voted in person. I
Oh,
realize,
really?
and that's a unique thing. And it's only been 2 elections because I'm so young, but or 20. I was just doing the math. It's been a lot. But somebody who works in government and politics, I was always on a campaign
Mhm.
or involved or
Right.
away at college or something. Well, even then
Yeah.
I was on a campaign. And so I was just never available on election day to work. And so I've missed my opportunity, I guess. Maybe one day. I do like the stickers though.
Yes.
Maybe that's
Yeah. So we mail those to everybody in their ballots because
oh
everybody
good.
likes the sticker. So, and
Uh,
we really encourage Jared, people to vote early. Like if you should have gotten your voter guide before getting your ballot. One way to guarantee that your vote that your vote is included in those first results will release shortly after the polls close at 8 o'clock on election day, is to make sure that your ballot gets received prior to March 2nd. Like, right. So Saturday, March 2nd, typically we're able to process the ballots and get those all tallied in time to be released on election day. And so that's why there's so much vote left to count, is the vast majority of voters are obviously coming in right before and on election day. And then of course we're accepting ballots for 7 days after. So that's why it does take a long time to vote. So as elections officials, we're always encouraging people to vote early. It makes our lives a little easier.
I will, and I create a handy guide because I get a lot of questions from some of my neighbors and friends, and they're like, "Well, who's who in this, and
Mhm.
what does this mean?" So that's important for me to take my time, but also get it in early. So let's talk about the counting process.
Sure.
I've been at a number of election watch parties with you a couple of years ago, with other elected officials who've been running for office. Where How does the process to count work, and what comes in that? There's usually one big batch that
Yeah.
comes maybe like an hour and a half after the polls close,
Yeah.
right? What's in that big batch? Is there a second batch that usually comes that night? Talk about counting.
Sure. So the way that we count votes, right? So I'll just full disclosure, since 2018, Contra Costa County has used Dominion voting systems. It's very accurate, works well. It has the lion's share of counties in California use Dominion voting systems. There are 3 systems that are certified by the California Secretary of State. We use Dominion. So we have 6 large high-speed tallying machines. And going back to because of the significant shift to that 90 to 95% coming in vote by mail. So a decision predated my election to move to what's called a central count model. So rather than what we used to do, which is to send tallying equipment out to every polling place, right? The office made the decision to bring every vote cast at a polling place back to our office to run through these 6 high-speed machines, right? So we're centrally counting it. That did 2 things. It had the effect of saving 2 weeks worth of staff time in preparing and testing that equipment, right? To go out to in this election, what will be 147 polling places. And then it also saved the most commonly asked question by poll workers when they would call the command center, and because they'd turn it on and they'd, have trouble getting that tallying equipment going. So I just want to mention that to people who maybe were used to feeding them into some sort of counting at the polling place, right? So we're at central count, and that allows us to use our fastest machines. So to get to your question about what's included in that first batch, right? So under California law, we are forbidden from releasing any results until after the polls are closed at 8 o'clock on election day. So as close to 8 o'clock as possible, we will release the batch of votes that have been tallied, right? Again, it's that vote by mail and early voting that happened up to, and including that Saturday before the election, right? So regional early voting at our 5 early voting sites starts on Friday, March 1st, and happens on Saturday, March 2nd. So that first batch of results will likely include everything that's been received through March 2nd. We will go through, and so then when we have the opportunity, because what happens is those 147 polling places bring us all their vote. We have a system of depots where there are, the inspectors from every polling place bring the counts, bring the ballots. And again, ballots are never alone. They're brought in pairs. And then there are depot drivers that bring those ballots then into our office. The election day operations team is very well organized and has a terrific game plan for March 5th. And a little shout out to my Clerk-Recorder team, who does all the stuff that's not elections. And I'm happy to talk about that. A significant number of those staff will be helping us out on election night to help fill all these roles. But so throughout the night, we will be reporting periodically until so that all of the election day vote that comes in gets counted. And so when we at whatever time, probably between 11 and 12 o'clock, depending on turnout, we will issue our last report of the night. And so that would include all of election day, plus all the vote by mail received all the vote received through Saturday, March 2nd. Then we go through the process of, the office has traditionally had a practice of releasing additional results, sometimes the next day, and then again, not until Friday of that week. And what'll happen is that, and I'm really trying to get us away from using on election night, getting rid of the language that says 100% of precincts reported, because that gives us implication that all the vote is in, when in fact, all of the election day vote is in from 100% of those precincts, but it's not all the vote because we have
It's
to accept
actually the
ballots.
minority of the vote because it's less than
Exactly.
half now.
Exactly. And we want to do everything that we can to convey confidence and clarity and information to voters about why it does take so long for us to count the vote, right? So we have a plan that we expect to certify this election by March 28th. And so between election day of March 5th, we'll put out results on a pretty regular schedule, but then we expect to certify the election by March 28th. We have fully 30 days to do it after March 5th under California law, but we're confident that we'll have our certified result by March 28th.
Wow, that's like, the game gauntlet is thrown down here. Like, we got this, guys. We got this. You might
Well,
not sleep the 26th through the 28th, but we got this.
well, we have a pretty detailed wall calendar that includes 77 of the more than 200 important tasks associated with successfully completing this election. And we have a terrific social marketing intern from the community college district who color coded it in a way so that visually all of our staff, permanent and temporary, have a good idea about what the priorities and deadlines are for any particular day going in through the election.
Okay, so I want to come back to the timeline again. At 8 p.m.,
Yep.
the polls close,
Yep.
and you could then start running all the ballots that have come through March 2nd into the
Well, we
system.
will have already tallied those.
You'll have tallied those. You just can't.
So the first reports that go up shortly after the polls close will be for that vote through March 2nd, right?
Okay.
And then there'll be a lag while we're waiting for them. We have to tally the election day vote, right?
Right.
Are coming in from all the polling places that close at 8 o'clock.
And they got to be driven in. So that
And they got
could
to be
take,
driven in
depending
from
on
all
where they
over
are, and they're
from
all
all over
coming
the
to
county.
Martinez.
And then as that, throughout the night, as the vote increases, what that's doing is capturing the election day vote from all the 147 different polling places. And for example, I want to give us total flexibility. I just want to explain how the process works. We're able to release results once they go all the way through our process, right? Because we check twice, we make sure everything's all set. And so, you go from signature verification of a vote by mail envelope, right? Then what happens is that they're extracted and they're separated to preserve the anonymity of the vote, right? So once this ballot comes out of a ballot envelope, it's important so that nobody knows how Terrence votes. Nobody knows how I vote or you vote. And then that is tallied. So, we try to do it as quickly as we can, but we just have to run it all through our processes.
Sure. And so go through those numbers you shared again. How many people do you expect to vote via mail? How many early, and then how many on election day?
Yeah. So right. And again, all of this depends on turnout. So I hope every Contra Costan that's hearing this uses their right to participate in our democracy and exercises their right to vote. In terms of the numbers of ballots we're dealing with, it all depends on the voter and how many they turn in. But since 2020, between 90 to 95% of all of the votes that get cast in Contra Costa elections come in as a vote by mail ballots, right? And about half of those come in through our 40 secure drop boxes around the county that we empty every day, multiple times. And then about half of that comes in through the United States Postal Service, right? Postage paid. You do not have to put a stamp on it. Put it in any blue USPS box, mail it out from your house. It's great to be able to lean on our federal partners to get about half of our vote in rather than having to collect that ourselves. And so what's left, right, is about, between 5 and 10% of the overall vote will come in from those 147 polling places. There's a small number of folks that utilize the regional early voting centers. There's one regional early voting site in each of the 5 supervisorial districts of Contra Costa. And all that information's in the voter guide. Also, as of yesterday, people can come and vote in person in our office, in our lobby. We have voting equipment set up. We have our lobby is a polling place from now through election day. And we're able to serve any voter in the county at our polling place. So come on down.
So the first batch of results, if you're looking at it, and we won't hold you if you can't comment on this, I'll just guide the listeners through this.
Yeah.
should really come in with roughly 90% of the vote, with between 5 and 10% trailing at 11, between 11 and midnight, or
Little
along the
caveat,
way between then.
you've got that almost right, except that it's 90% comes in vote by mail, but way more than half of it doesn't come in until the day before, the day of, or the day after the election. Like, so, right? So more than
Okay.
half of that 90% comes in after we're able to post those first results. Now, right, if you're a statistics person, in theory, right, it is a representative sample. So often, right, what the results from election night don't change. All that happens is that more vote comes in. And so, but you know, I can't, that's not for me to say. We just count the
Right.
votes. But anyway,
It's,
that's, I think that's why the message about voting early is important and it's so helpful to us, is because we would love to get as close to the true vote by mail number, right, in those results on election night. But we can't do that if it comes in too close to election day, right? Because we just don't have the time to process it.
yeah, well, and it's so
Does that,
different
am I
than,
making sense?
yeah, because you're
Okay.
talking, it's coming in from all over,
Yeah.
right? So it's reminding me when I was a political campaign operative, we were like, okay, well, where did the college vote come in yet?
Yep.
You know, and we're trying to count who won. Did the senior communities come in yet? You know, and which senior community came in? Oh, that's the one with 4,000, but this one has 12,000 and that hasn't been counted yet. And we were looking at the map to see who won that way. Now it's this more statistical, even sample
Yeah.
of who's coming in advance and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What else should I be asking specifically about the upcoming election day and elections that you want to share?
Sure. Well, I think that the biggest thing that is unusual about this impacts about 1 in 5 voters in Contra Costa, right? So that's the 20% of folks, more or less. I mean, it's different in different communities across Contra Costa, that are no party preference voters. Because in Contra Costa, we have 156,000 no party preference voters. We sent them all a postcard in December to say, hey, there's this partisan primary. Your ballot will not have presidential candidates on it unless you request a different ballot, right? So this is where it's a little complex. So there's 3 parties that allow no party preference voters to so-called cross over. So you can request a Democratic Party ballot, a Libertarian Party ballot, or an American Independent Party ballot. Those ballots will have presidential candidates, but not party committee candidates on it, right? So those are special kind of crossover ballots that are available to no party preference voters. Now, we only got 8,000 responses from those 156,000 postcards we sent. So the vast majority of the no party preference ballots that are out there in mailboxes today and tomorrow will not have presidential candidates. That might be fine for that NPP voter. But we are staffed up and anticipating that lots of votes, because there's instructions on the ballot itself that says contact our office if you would like one of those ballots. Also, those voters have an opportunity to re-register with 3 other political parties, right? Because if you're an NPP voter and you want to vote in the Republican, the Green Party, or the Peace and Freedom Party presidential preference primaries, then you have to re-register as a member of that party, and then you can vote. So on a practical level, we will, if you give us enough time and you call us, we will send you out a new ballot. And that will even be true if you have to re-register. We can do that up until February 19th. So, right, so that's an additional, so by people, if you're hearing this on February 21st for the first time, I'm flashing forward because you told me about the time that you're going to put this podcast out. You will have an opportunity to vote if you're an NPP voter, if you go to a polling place. So you can either go in person to our office any day of the week during business hours. Those details are in your voter guide. Or you can go to one of the 5 regional early voting sites, 1 in each supervisorial district. Or you can wait until election day and go to one of the 147 polling places, and our staff will be able to help you mark a ballot and vote for presidential candidates in either of those 2 buckets, right? The 3 crossover options, Or you can vote provisionally as a newly registered member of either the Republican, the Peace and Freedom, or the Green parties, if that's how you want to vote. So I know that's a little bit of a mouthful, but that's the tricky thing about this election, right? That's why I've been recording podcasts. We put a pop-up on our website because it's a little bit of a head scratcher, and I think it's a big burden on voters because there are different rules for different parties. So
Right.
it takes a little explaining. And I hope it doesn't deter people from participating.
So if you're a non-registered, if you're not registered in either one of the political parties, what are you, the NPPs, what is their ballot that they are getting for March? Are they getting a ballot, and what's
Yeah.
in
So,
it?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, for example, if you're an NPP voter in the Moraga School District, you're getting a ballot that has unopposed Candace Anderson for supervisor, right? She's running without opposition. You're getting a state Senate race that's open, right? That's on your ballot. And you're getting a local ballot, and then you're getting a local ballot measure for your school district, right? There are four, and Mark Martinez has a couple things. They have a school thing, they have a city thing. So there's a local measure that counts. If you're a District 4 in the Board of Supervisors, you have an open county supervisor seat. First time an incumbent hasn't run in more than 20 years. So that is on your ballot. And so, and then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that after serving for more than 31 years as the senior senator from California before she passed away, Dianne Feinstein's former Senate seat is open, and there is no incumbent running in that race. So, right, so you have a US Senate seat, and then also there is one statewide ballot measure. The state legislature basically cleared the deck for this election, and there's only one statewide ballot measure, Prop 1, that is on your ballot. So I mean, I'm obsessed with elections, and I always think it's important to vote, and there's always something on there, but there are county races, local measures, state candidates, congressional candidates, Senate candidates on this race, US Senate. So a lot of important things.
How does the office predict turnout in elections, both in the primary and in the general? You're dealing with it from a staffing and resource perspective. Commentators are doing this. In any conversation, somebody can say, this is going to be the highest turnout ever. This is going to be the lowest turnout ever.
Yeah.
Nobody's excited. How do people it's a guesstimate, right? You never know until you're there, but
Right.
how do you predict? How do you know who's coming out?
Yeah. Well, we have a really experienced election official working as the manager of our voting systems unit within our elections division. And right, he looks at the data, and he looks at past elections to see about what is driving turnout. Now, granted, elections officials generally say what is on the ballot drives turnout. Sort of nothing that we do as elections officials can significantly impact turnout, right? I mean, I think that's why some people always are salivating about some big intervention, right? Is Taylor Swift going to make an endorsement? Will that drive people? Well, I will tell you, a National Voter Registration Day last year, Taylor Swift got 30,000 people to register, young people, right? And right, more than anything that I do to get, more forms out at the city of Oakley or to League of Women Voters, right? I mean, that right, that's moving numbers. But what we do is we look at previous elections. So I don't want to jinx us and talk about what we historically estimate turnout to be, right? Because there can be a range of between 25 on the low end to 45 or 50 on the high end of turnout in a primary overall, depending. And there's a big wide swings. Some parts of our county turn out it's more significant other numbers than others. And then, right, but when you're talking about a general election, then the top of that range is sort of the bottom of what the turnout, right? And then it can go more between 45 and 65 or 70% turnout in a general election. But, we are, right, there's a lot of pundits that are sort of talking about how they're worried about turnout, that this is an uninspired presidential race. And so then it gets harder for people to get more excited about what's down the ballot. So what we do is and there's certain election codes that we follow to make sure we have enough ballots at every polling place, right? And we have to make decisions about ordering resources and deploying staff and how many precincts we can combine into one polling place, right? And how can we And we try to make sure that we have an equity lens in thinking about how close is a polling place to public transportation. We have there's a new law that we have to implement this year to increase accessibility for voters with potential disabilities, that they can avail themselves of curbside voting. So if you do go to a polling place, you'll see new signage at all 147 of our polling places that describes to a voter the phone number they need to call to get the poll workers inside to come out and bring a ballot and a secrecy sleeve so that those folks can vote in privacy right at their car, even though every polling place needs to be accessible under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we're going to great lengths to try to make sure that this works for people and that they have an ability to vote in secret independently. And I'm hearing numbers I don't even want to share publicly that we're worried about this turnout being low. And I hope that we are wrong about that.
Well, and going back just to 2020, Donald Trump got the most votes of any presidential candidate in history until on the same night Joe Biden got, I believe it was like 5 or 7 million votes more than him. So, it was a substantial turnout. And I've heard
Yeah.
similar things to you, which is some of those driving factors and the lack of excitement about either one of the candidates at the top. And it'll be interesting to see on election day, right? In Martinez, if they have a couple of small things on the ballot, does that drive more local people out than
Yeah.
in Walnut Creek or another city that doesn't have anything local on the ballot?
Right.
Does that first open Senate race with a competitive primary in 30 plus years, does that drive turnout in a way we've never seen on both sides?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. All good
your
questions.
your office, moving away from elections, does more than just deal with elections, as I gave that long title before. It is
Yes.
the County Clerk, Recorder, and Registrar of Voters. So let's
Yes.
talk. What is the Clerk and Recorder? What do you do?
Sure. Well, we are responsible for maintaining both the public record, meaning property transactions in terms of deeds and recording maps of developments and different things like that, right? And liens that can happen, right? Property transactions. And also vital records. So we like to say that we're with you in some of the most consequential moments of your life, right? Your birth, your marriage, right? We give out birth certificates for folks. We issue birth certificates for people who are born in Contra Costa. When I needed to get a new birth certificate, when I was renewing my passport, it took less than 3 minutes for me to come. This is long before I was elected to this office. So, right, in the fall of 2019, I came in, it took me less than 3 minutes to get a birth certificate. We're really proud of how quickly we can serve the public. And then, so we do marriage licenses, and also we perform wedding ceremonies, right? And so that's where one of my titles is Commissioner of Civil Marriages. So I can deputize people to marry people, and also I can perform wedding ceremonies. So our office we innovate on both sides of our house. So for example, we, a number of years ago implemented electronic recording. We're trying to get more and more of Contra Costa's cities to participate in e-recording with us. We also do destination weddings about 3 times a year. So actually next week on Valentine, by the time this is released, we will have performed more wedding ceremonies at the Cobra Experience Museum in Martinez, which has a lot of amazing, cool cars, but including 2 cars that were in the movie Ford versus Ferrari. But anyway, so we charge the same amount of money to perform a wedding ceremony at a cool destination as we do for performing a wedding ceremony in our office. And so we do that twice a year on Mount Diablo, the Friday of Memorial Day weekend and of Labor Day weekend. And then we do this special destinations on Valentine's Day. We also anticipate any palindromatic day turns out couples to get married at our office. So we anticipate that April 24th will be a banner wedding day. You're going to want to make your appointment early for 42424. And so I'll probably get in on some of the fun on that day. And so it's a very festive, wonderful, busy, vibrant office. And actually, of the 80 full-time employees that we're authorized to have in our office, 50 of them work in the clerk recorder functions and only 30 permanently work in elections. And so that's the divide. And so the clerk recorder function is sort of constant flow. And then of course, with elections, we've got a lot of peaks and valleys. So we have to hire a lot of extra help when we're particularly busy, like we are with a presidential.
And I was laughing a little bit as you talked about the 424 weddings, but it just really shows your office has to plan ahead to those things,
Yeah,
that people are making appointments, or for Valentine's Day. So in the middle of all the ballots being out, now that the primary has moved up, you guys have to, maybe have 30 or 50 or three, I don't know, weddings that show up on Valentine's Day.
yes.
So
Yeah, we'll probably end up marrying about 30 couples that day, about half at our destination weddings and then half here at our office. So
there you go. In
it's
the
fun.
meantime, I'm like most husbands, trying not to screw up what we're doing for our wives for Valentine's Day. So that's our focus on, flowers, kids out, chocolates, or whatnot we're doing here.
Well, yeah, my husband and I've been together with my husband since 2000, been married since 2002, but we've been in kind of an anti-Valentine's Day couple, not to get, but for a long time we've given and we'll give and receive the same card and just write one line in it and then wait until the next year. It's kind of a little something that we started, and then it's like, oh gosh, where's the Valentine card to write in it? And then you give it and then you take it back and you get ready to write it the next year. But it's,
I actually like that idea.
yeah.
I might do that versus I always feel now that cards are $8. Now I'm gonna get in trouble from all my audience and they're all gonna away. But now that a
Oh,
Hallmark card's $8.
I love buying paper cards. I just got a birthday card in the mail from my son who's away in college. Just warmed my heart. So,
I should preface that by saying my dad used to own a Hallmark store when I was a kid, and
oh,
so the cards
cool.
used to be free, and I never knew what they costed, but
Yeah,
I pay attention to that. So
yeah.
I always end with very similar questions. What haven't I asked yet that you want to let people know?
I would say that I love that our office works collaboratively to solve problems, right? And so we work with both in the clerk recorder world and the elections world. We're always working with our county counterparts from, our other counties, right? So in elections, we're a part of leading an 11 county coalition of Bay Area elections officials. And we're trying to just get the facts out about how things work, right? We're trying to fight this mis, dis, and malinformation that's out there. We want to really demystify how elections work. So far more important than putting a picture of my old driver's license. If you want to link in the notes and stuff we've got a couple of new pieces of collateral out from the Bay Area Elections Officials Coalition that this nonpartisan nonprofit helped us, called the Election Group. They helped us put together. And so one is about, how do I know my vote was counted? And another is, why does it take so long to count the vote? And so we'd just love to get your help in sharing that out. I'm happy to forward those to you.
Yeah, forward those to me and we'll put them in the show notes, and we'll leave everybody in the audience disappointed that we won't put up your picture from your
I don't
driver's
know.
license.
I could probably find my college ID somewhere, but I don't remember. I don't know where I can find my old driver's license. When I moved back here and was 35, I took a really good driver's license photo, but I don't know where that one ended up. I did get a new one, but anyway, I'm rambling.
It's all good. It's people like that they get to know us. So I really appreciate you being here today and educating us at this busy time of the year for you. But it's important for everybody to do this. Everybody, get your ballots in. You're hearing this February 21st or after. Mail them in. Get it done today if you can, whatever day you're listening to this. Get it counted early and often. So
Excellent. I'm a big fan of donuts with democracy. When we moved here, when our kids were just 5 and 2 from New York City, I started a tradition of buying Johnny's Donuts. We live in Lafayette. And so I always bought donuts for my kids and brought them along to the polling place. And it certainly was a good way to inspire my kids to get excited about election day. So whatever you need to do to inspire yourself to get your ballot in, please do.
great. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thanks, Jared.
Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Ash, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.